Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Justin, aka MOONSIDE, a sound and visual artist from Charlotte, North Carolina. You are watching From Scratch, and in today's episode, we sampled a track from Backrooms' original soundtrack. I'm a big fan of unfiction, ARG, and web series and internet horror. I've even made a few of my own, and after watching Backrooms recently, I was really inspired to sample something from the soundtrack. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this session. For the first track in this beat, I chopped up the sample, which is from the Backrooms OST. I'm not going to play the track. I'll leave a link to what I sampled in the description below, but it's called Cafe BOSSA version 1 Backrooms OST. And I threw it in the Mimic Creative Sampler after I initialized it, and I dropped the speed down to about 81.3. I brought the tune knob up on the pitch up to 50, and this slice mode, I brought it to about 70.3, and I messed around with the amp envelope and brought up the attack. It looks like I messed around with the compression and the EQ, and these are the chops. So the next thing I came up with was piano, and I wanted to initially plug up my guitar and do a harmony with this guitar line that's in the sample, but I decided to do it with a piano instead, and I found this preset in the Radical Piano inside of Reason called
The Back Room, which I thought was very fitting for this episode because, you know, we're sampling Backrooms, the original soundtrack.
I messed around with the ambiance. I think I messed around with the character a little bit. I pulled the ambiance all the way down because I wanted it to really just give some backbone to what was happening with the guitar again and the sample. I added this quartet, the chorus, the preset Not Quite Right. I brought the dry wet down and the width up, and I put a channel dynamics inside of Reason with the compressor on and the dry wet all the way up, and this is what I have. The next thing I moved on to was the 808, and I used the monotone bass synthesizer inside of Reason. I used the preset Dark and Stormy, and I messed around with the spread. I think I messed around with the amp envelope or the attack, and I brought up the drive a little bit. Other than adding these Audiomatic tape presets and this bottom preset, I just messed around with the dry wet on both of those, and I came up with this very simple bass line. So the next thing I came up with was the drums, and for the kick I added a heavy boomy bass drum, which you can find this in the effects folder, effects patches inside of Reason. For the snare I added a synchronous, a beat repeater preset, and I brought the dry wet down on that, and I added a pulverizer, and I used the preset snare enhancer. I think I just messed around with the volume and the blend right here. For the hi-hat, really all I did was add velocity automation. So with the synchronous, I added this triplet sidechain preset, and I brought the dry wet to about 69 and the volume down, and I added this osmium distortion matrix country vintage amp, and I brought that dry wet to about 50, and then I added a fresh air. It's because they weren't cutting through initially like I wanted to, and I added the hi-hat lifter. Also, I added some pitch automation. You can see up here, I added some pitch automation and just messed with some of the parameters here on each of the channels. And then we added that open hi-hat, which you heard in the drum loop. All I added was a fresh air to that, and then we added that perk snare, and I added an Audiomatic bright preset, brought the dry wet to about 75. And then we added this object modeling synthesizer for the tom. I used the preset mid tom synth. I just pumped up the volume all the way up, added some reverb, threw on some more Audiomatic, the tape preset and the bright preset, messed around with the volumes and the dry wet on those. And the interesting thing that I did with these drums is I grouped them all into its own mixer channel so I could have a drum group. And I'll play the drums again without the preset on it and then play it with, just so you can see the A and B difference. I use this Osmium distortion matrix, the preset compact cassette drums, and I brought the dry wet down to 25 and brought the level up. This is what they sound like. And this is what it sounds like with everything on it. It sounds so much more beefed up, more glued together.
Yo, Moonside, these drums are knocking, bro. You must be smoking on that cane strain. For real, for real.
So for the next thing, I added some horns from this Algorithm FM synthesizer. I use a preset called Brass Section, and these horns sound so good. I'm going to be using this preset in future beats, future songs, future productions. The only thing I messed around with was the volume. I turned on the reverb, I turned on the compressor, added some distortion and brought that down, left it on just the distortion setting, and messed around with some of the EQ here. Just a few chords. The next thing that I added was a polytone, and I played the exact same chords as I did for the brass section, because once you hear the beat all together, you'll hear the brass and the synth keys kind of playing off of each other. I use a polytone dual layer synthesizer. I use the Poly Wapper preset. All I messed with was the volume and this release knob right here on the amp envelope. Use a high pass filter to cut a lot of the low frequencies out so I can make room for the drums and the 808, and a little bit of room for the bass that still remains in the sample that I chopped up. But this is what I have for the synth, and I added a pitch bend on this first chord. And I'm going to play you this first chord so you can hear that pitch bend. It's very subtle. The next thing that I added was a Synth Pluck from this Wave synthesizer. The preset is Lush Out. I didn't add anything other than the Auto Pan, which you can find this in the modulation folder of the effects patches inside of Reason. And I just messed with the volume, and I came up with this very simple line. And the last thing that I added was this Synth Lead, which is a preset from a sound pack that came from the Reason Companion Cascading Delay Drive. So I use this indie surf pop Reason sound pack, and I use the Cascading Delay Drive, it's a synth. And if you open it up here, it looks like it's just a Europa initialized with some Audiomatic and 2 echoes and a scream. This preset is just so fire. It does not need anything. I think the only thing I did was cut some of the bass, again with a high pass filter on the mixer channel. And I came up with this little lead line that goes like this. That is everything for this beat. This is From Scratch Episode 4, sampling Backrooms OST, and I'm just going to play this beat for a couple of loops, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
hitting the gritty to this in the Backrooms twin, that would be hella tough.
Thank you so much for watching, and I truly appreciate it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video with someone that might enjoy it. If you're interested in the DAW, instruments, or effects I use in this video, please check out the links that I've left in the description below. Thank you again for being here with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.